first thing I'm going to start to make today is a little side table. And I have a couple of buttons here from my big button jar that you've probably seen in a previous video. I've cut a little piece of balsa wood out, and you see that laying there. And I have a wooden bead. So it's only going to have 3 parts to it. This is some Gorilla Glue that's actually a construction glue. Very tough stuff, but it is a little hard to work with at times because it's kind of like a jelly, and it's clear. And, well, I'm not going to put any on that right now. I need to do a few things to make sure that I get it on straight. And I'm just cleaning off the excess glue with a Q-tip right now. And I'm just seeing where I can sand this down a little better. It does have a bit of a rough edge on one side where I cut it. Sometimes balsa wood compresses and leaves air holes and gaps and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to take a little 2-part resin putty and put it in that area that's a little rough and has a lot of spaces in it where I cut it on an edge using an X-Acto knife. And I'm just going to smooth that down and just put that on there. Now the other thing I'm making is a couch, and I've already cut this out, and it's based on a Kage couch from the 1930s, but I'm making it with a camel back on it instead of just being round. And this is basically like the chair that I made previously, you see in the foreground there in blue. It's the same type of piece of furniture. However, it's going to have legs on it that are beads rather than having a solid base on it with legs. And I've shown that before. I printed this fabric off on Inkjet cotton. I made the pattern for it in Procreate, lifting it off of a 1930s couch that I saw online. And I can't find that picture right now, but I'll get it some other time. And now I'm just going to go back to finishing up this little side table. I'm sanding that putty down, and I put an X through the square. I made it a square so that I can place the base of the little side table right in the middle, and I'm just sanding it right now, making sure that it's completely smooth for painting. And you can see where I put the X with a pencil through it. I just want to make sure I get it on there completely straight, and then I'll let that dry and paint it. This is such a simple construction, but I think it goes with the furniture really well. And the other side tables I've seen by Kage, some of them have more of a turned base on it, but I don't have any way of turning wood right now, and I didn't have any beads that I could put together to make it look like it was turned. I'm pinning the pattern now to the Inkjet printed fabric, which still has the backing on it, and I'll keep that backing on until I put some fray check around the edges so that I can make the seams really small and not worry about them unraveling. And I'll leave the bottom open. And these are just some tailor's shears that I have that I use for most of my sewing. They're really good. It's a great brand, and they don't cost $300 like some of the scissors cost, and much more. And they've been a very good pair of scissors. I've had them for about 5 years, and they've stayed sharp. At some point, I'll have to have them sharpened. And I'll just take the pins out, and here comes the fray check. And I buy this on Amazon. I've mentioned it before. It's not cheap, but I buy it in bulk because I do use quite a bit of it because I make doll clothes. And I try to keep the seams small when I'm making doll clothes, but I need to have a seam that doesn't ravel, so this is very useful. cutting with pinking shears is doesn't work real well. It does on large clothing, but not for me for doll clothing anyway. So I'll let that dry. And I glued together a piece of foam core and a piece of scrap balsa wood for the seat. And now I'm looking for 4 beads for the legs because I'm going to match them to the little book cases that I made previously. So I got 5 out because I'm afraid I'll lose one while I'm making this, so I need to have a little bit of extra. Okay, I'm going to put the first coat of paint on this little side table. And it's the same color I used on the bookshelves and on the legs of and base of the other piece of furniture I made, the chair. It'll take 2 coats. The bead's not going to take the paint real well. So I'll just, and also the button on the bottom will be much darker, so I'll have to put 2 coats over everything. And now I'm just going to separate the backing off of the printer paper fabric. The reason why I'm doing this on printing, doing my own, is I really want to reproduce the look of the furniture. And although I have fabric that goes back to the 30s in my stockpile, it just doesn't have the look that I want. Some of the prints are way too big. So that's why I'm making this fabric pretty much from scratch. At least as far as the design is concerned. And I'm going to leave the end open on this. And what I'm doing is I'm taking one of those fabric pencils that you use. It washes out, but it doesn't matter here. And I'm going over the very little seam allowance I'm leaving to make sure that when I sew it, I stay right on track to keep that shape for that camelback sofa. Because if it's uneven in any way, it's going to show up very prominently on such a small piece of furniture. And then I'll sew all the way around it. And I'm just doing that for the cushion as well. It's just going to be a single cushion all the way across. And I'm just going to go over that line again to make sure I can see it. Now I've sewn it. I've used a hand stitch back stitch for both pieces. I didn't get my sewing machine out to do this. I just sewed it by hand. And I'm just going to take this book binding tool that I have and go in there and make sure that the shape comes out by pressing it through. And I'm going to be sewing up the sides before I stuff this whole thing on the backing, because that's how the arms are made. So I have some of that another white pencil, sewing pencil for seam allowance and drawing lines and darts and that sort of thing. And it'll rub off. The lines won't be visible after I've sewn them up and it's been stuffed. I'm hiding the little knot that I make in the end of the thread under the fabric so it won't be seen. And I'm not using a back stitch here, I'm just using a running stitch, and I'll go all the way up. And I'm trying to keep the stitches as close as possible, going all the way through both layers of fabric. But when I get to the top, I'll put in 3 stitches and then I'll go back over it a few times just to lock it in. Right there, 3 stitches. And with the beeswax, this will keep it strong. And then I'm just going to go back and put a few stitches in and cut it off. And that'll stay. And I'll just do the other side. Again, just rolling a little knot in the bottom put the knot underneath so it can't be seen, and I'll put a running stitch all the way up. And then close it again with the 3 stitches in the same hole, and then I'll run the stitches back again a few spaces just to lock it in. And I'll cut it off. Now I need some cardboard, and here's some waste cardboard and to make the back of the couch, and I have to cut 3 pieces. I started cutting it out and it went over that edge that had been peeled, and I thought I better not use that, so I started again. And for the first piece, it's just in the middle, it's the largest piece. And I'm going to have to probably trim it as I go here because I did make it as tight as I could, and I'd rather have to cut some off rather than cut a whole new piece because it's too small. And then I'll cut the bottom off to make sure I have plenty of room to fold fabric back. And it really needs to get in there really tight. And now where the arms are, I have to do 2 separate pieces. And again, I'll cut them to the exact size, but I'll probably have to trim them again. But I'll know how much as soon as I try to fit them in. Just taking a little off at a time so that I don't overdo it. Put the last piece in. I'll have to do the same thing probably. Oh, that one went on just fine. Okay, so I'm just taking the base of the foam core and the balsa wood and using it as a pattern with some waste foam for the seat pillow, the seat pillow. And the seat pillow will be stuffed as well with some of that fiber fill. And I'll stuff that as just on the top. And then the back of the sofa will go around it. And I'm just going to use a glue gun to glue this fabric because it'll stay really well. Now I'm going to stuff the back of the sofa and the arm areas. This is the first time I've made this particular piece of furniture, so I'm winging it as I go along a little bit. I didn't have an actual sofa to use as a model, so I went online and looked at the pictures of all the different sofas Kage made at that period of time in the 1935 to 38 area. And this is a camelback sofa I thought would match the chair a little better. Okay, now I'm going to cover the base with fabric. Get my glue gun out. And again, the base is just foam and a piece of waste balsa wood that I glued together with wood glue. I'm just wrapping it like a gift. I hope I'm doing, the next time I make one of these couches, it'll be better. I'll know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to cover it so that you don't see any seams or any of that black from the foam core. I probably should have cut this piece a little bigger, but I didn't, and I need to use it, so I'll have to cover the edges with another piece of fabric. But that's okay. In the illustrations that I've seen, they all do have a piece at the end, each end of that rectangle that covers, and and then the back will cover the cushion because I left quite a bit of length on it. I just have to, I just really hate glue gun strings. I'm just going to fold it back and then glue the pillow right down onto the top. And then this back gets glued on pretty much in the same way. You have to fold it, glue it a couple times. The next time I make one of these couches, I will also make sure that I leave more of a seam allowance on the bottom. That was the thing I learned from this experiment. I was just burning my fingers trying to fold it over and have enough. It was just barely enough fabric at the ends to fold it over. But I did manage to cover all of that white, and I did manage to fold it in such a way that you don't see it once the couch is assembled. I'm going over it again. The first time I did it, it didn't stick real well for some reason. I don't know what was going on. So I pulled it apart and did it again. And now these ends have to be covered. So I'm just going to eyeball it and fold up a couple of ends that cover that raw edge, because the arms don't go over it completely. That was the other thing. I didn't make the arms quite deep enough. So the next time I do this, I'll know better, but it'll work out just fine. I'm also going to look around for some antique fabric on Etsy and some other places and in the antique shops, so that I can actually have fabric from that period that would be suitable for furniture making. So I'll be shopping for that in the future and keeping an eye out for it. You could even take some old clothes maybe that are ruined from that time period and salvage the fabric off of them. Okay, I glued those side pieces on, and I'm just pulling the arms over and gluing them in place. And the couch is pretty much done except the feet. I have to paint the beads and glue them on the bottom. And I'm just using the chair just to make sure that my scaling is correct. And it is. The scale is correct for this. So I need to mix up just a little more paint and paint those legs and give another coat to the little side table that I made. You see me drop it. I caught it just before it hit the couch and stained it. I have to be more careful. Okay, there's the finished couch. And the legs are dry. I see things that I could improve for the next one, but I think it turned out pretty well. And it looks neat and folded over. Just, as I said, barely had enough fabric to fold it over, but it worked. And it has a nice camel back on it. And I will be able to put that in my future refurbished Keystone dollhouse. And here's a little setup I put together. It's not in the dollhouse, it's just a background with some wallpaper that I made in a floor and a little rug that was actually printed on velour paper or velvet paper. Looks really realistic, and it's a rug from the time period. And there's my little end table. I didn't make the little ottoman or footrest. I found that was in an antiques hunt buy. But there's some of my butterflies, the painting, all the other things that I made, and then the little doll that I found. I think it's called a Flagg doll from the 1940s, late 1940s. And so that's the beginning of the living room. Well, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. And I'll be back with some more of these types of films next week. Bye-bye.